Hey everyone, so today we are going to be focusing on exploring fractions as division. So we're going to be interpreting fractions as division, and we're going to find out how decimals and fractions are equal or equivalent to one another. So before we even begin, if you think about using your calculator and looking at the fraction 1/2, what can we type in the calculator to figure out the decimal equivalent? On the screen, I have the calculator, but it doesn't work. So if I did use a real calculator, I would first press 1 and then the division sign. So let me see if I can mark it up. First, I would press 1, then the division sign, and then the 2, and the equal button. And the answer would equal to 0.15, or half. I could do the same thing with 1/4. Let me just erase this. And if I were to type in an actual calculator, 1 divided by 4, I would get the decimal answer of 0.25, or 25 hundredths. So if you look carefully, you could think of this as a way of thinking of fraction as division itself. So the line in the middle for 1/2 is like a division sign. 1/2 means 1 divided by 2, and 1/4 means 1 divided by 4. So if you follow that on the calculator, you'll get the decimal equivalent every single time. What other numbers do you think you could divide to get 0.5 on the calculator? So just like we did before, to get 0.5, we could do 1 divided by 2, which equals 1/2. But we could also type in 2 divided by 4, and that also equals 2/4. But if you type that in the calculator, you also get 0.5. 3 divided by 6 is 3/6, and if you type that in the calculator again, you'll get 1/2. What about 50/100, which equals 50 divided by 100? Well, 50 hundredths is 1/2, and 200 divided by 400, or 200/400, is also going to give you 1/2. So just like we explored before, these are all equivalent fractions, but they also do equal 1/2. Let's explore the next page. Now, many of you may have heard the rule, you can't divide a smaller number by a larger number, but with fractions you can. So let's think of this as a story. Let's say you have 12 brownies and you want to divide it up between 3 friends. Here's the division problem you would be working with. Or you could write it like this, since we just said that the division sign also does mean a fraction bar. Now the answer would be 4. Okay, but let's change the story up a little bit so we're dealing with fractions. Let's say we have 3 brownies instead, and we have 12 people that we want to divide up the brownies with. As a fraction, that would equal 3/12. And those of you that can simplify, you can say that it equals 1/4. Okay, now as a decimal, 1 divided by 4 does equal 25 hundredths. Now let's change the story up a little bit, and maybe we can say that there are 2 brownies and there are 8 people. As a fraction, this would be 2/8, or 1/4, or 25 hundredths. So decimals, division, and fractions are all related to one another. Okay, so now we're going to look at a chart that records the wins and losses of 5 basketball teams. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue to think about fractions as division problems, and we're also going to think about how the division or the decimal equivalents work. So here we have 5 teams. They're the Dragons, Vikings, Falcons, Eagles, and Bears. And the W indicates the number of games that they won, and the L indicates the number of games that they lost. And what's recorded is in decimal form. And the first question I'm going to ask you is, how do you think they determined or calculated the record or the decimal number? Well, if you look at it carefully, when recording team wins and losses, what you do want to focus on or think about is the number of total wins that a team has and the total number of games that they played. Now, in order to figure out the number of games that they played all together, you would add these two columns together. The W and the L is going to give you the total number of games each basketball team played. So if I add 29 plus 11, that gives me a total of 40 games. Now, if I wrote this as a fraction and thought about the number of games that they won altogether and the number of games that they lost, and if I put that 29 divided by 40 into a calculator, that would give me the record in decimal format, which is 725 thousandths. So on the last column, I'm going to write the record, but as a fraction. And I'm going to do the same thing for all of the basketball teams. So the Vikings won 26 games, and to figure out the total number of games that they played, I would add 26 plus 13, and that gives me 39 games. And again, if I were to put this in a calculator and do 26 divided by 39, that would give me 0.667 or 667 thousandths. Same for the Falcons. 21 plus 17 is 38, and they won 21 out of 38 games, which gives us in decimal format 553 thousandths. Eagles won about half of their games and lost the other half, so 19 out of 38. And the Bears, if you add 12 plus 26, that gives you a total of 38. And that means that they won 12 games out of 38. And if we were to put that in a calculator, it would give you a record of 0.316. Now, if we were to determine who was in first place and figured out who was in last place, we would look at the record or the decimal. Okay? So if you think of it carefully, you already know how to put these decimals in order from least to greatest. So the team with the greatest record would be in first place, which are the Dragons. And then you would have the Vikings, the Falcons, the Eagles, and then the Bears would be in fifth place. Okay? So what you're going to do today is you're going to try to do the same thing yourself in your practice book.